Hey there, Precision Pyro Supply here. This is all about high-powered rocket engines. Who doesn't like rockets? I've been launching rockets since I was a kid. I've pressed whistle and black powder rockets. I haven't got quite to strobe rockets yet, or hybrids, but I love rocketry and I love pyrotechnics and signaling. And as it turns out, there are some very, very high quality composite rocket engines in these surplus expired signal flares. They're marine distress flares for the ocean, and once they expire they have to be disposed of, and that's how they get onto the market for civilians. Sometimes you'll see them at gun shows or online. And of course, a healthy question is, what would you want with expired pyrotechnic devices? Obviously, the implication is that they're less safe, less reliable. I have had, out of the thousands of these that I've screwed around with and modified and shot, I do have a license, by the way, so don't modify them if you aren't a licensed professional to do so. But I've had basically no failures to launch. I have had rockets launch that became unstable, but that's because they weren't properly balanced. And I can go into that in another video. But these are great, and you can see them fairly current dates, just recently expired. You've got sort of the standard aluminum metal signal flare, very common. The next generation is these. This one's a shuttle, but they're plastic rocket. Plastic rocket. So that's sort of the next level. A lot of the aluminum metal rockets are going out of production in favor of these plastic rockets. Another type of plastic rocket is your sort of a little bit more high-end Icarus type plastic rocket. And then more in the last few years, we've been going for the skinny, sort of skinny low profile version, again with a plastic hull. These all go up about 1,000 feet. And then they put out a parachute flare. It's a red flare, very high lumen, high brightness, magnesium red flare. And that's common to all the rockets, plastic, and here's an example of the aluminum one. Generally speaking, the flares go out before they hit the ground, but you cannot guarantee that. Never shoot these and assume that they're going to be a non-fire hazard. Anything pyrotechnic that burns or has a spark has a potential for a fire hazard. You should know that off the bat and take that into account. If you don't, you are flawed as a person. But the really neat thing is, if you don't want to just shoot these for signaling purposes or what have you, you can extract the engines. And they happen to have these pretty amazing composite rocket engines. My personal favorite are these plastic rockets. Not only do they have the composite rocket engine, but they have vents that cause them to spin stabilize. So the shuttle plastic rocket here and the Icarus both have not just a nozzle, but also a nozzle and spin stabilizing jets. The skinny Comets and the aluminum ones tend not to have that, making them a smidge less stable. If you're going to pop out the engines and reuse them in high-powered rocketry, you know, spin stabilization is less of an issue because you can use large fins if you want. I always thought from a physics point of view that these finless rockets were really fascinating solution to the drag problem. Also, these rockets have a very top-heavy payload. So, you know, Newton's laws come in, and once you get going in one direction, they tend to stay going in one direction. Now, I'm going to take a break here and show you some of the parachutes and flares that come inside these. Again, I do not recommend modifying or taking these apart and using the flares unless you have a license, background in pyrotechnics, and you know the laws. You can get into some trouble, but we're going to take a quick break here and look at what's inside some of these and what some of the engines look like. Alrighty, I have very quickly, with a needle nose pliers and a screwdriver, peeled back the hulls on a plastic rocket and one of the skinnier, newer rockets. Again, these are surplus, they're extremely inexpensive, and they have wonderful synthetic parachutes in them, chain, some really nice components. You figure if a rocket costs you about $5 to $10, you know, you'd probably have $5 for an engine, maybe $250 for a parachute, $250 for a flare. Yeah, I didn't pop open a whole bunch of different types. They're all basically the same. I do sell these, so destroying my inventory, sometimes people pay more for intact rockets. I do reuse all my components. I have a pyrotechnics license, so I use the flares. They're long burning red magnesium flares. They burn very hot. They are a fire danger. I reuse the parachutes in my rockets. And the whole reason I'm doing this video are these wonderful composite engines. I especially like these real skinny composite rocket engines. They have a nice nozzle, they're robust, they have a pass fire in the back for firing a parachute or a header of some kind, a star shell. They propel almost a pound up to 1,000 feet. The same is true of these larger ones. This is a shuttle, very similar to Icarus, with the spin stabilizing jets. Really powerful rocket engines, really well designed, really robust. Again, going about 1,000 feet, propelling, you know, almost a pound of payload and body. This is a composite engine from one of the aluminum cased, sort of older rockets. This one's a Payne's Wessex. Do be careful, there are some Chinese and some, what do you call it, Chinese, Korean, and South American rockets where the rocket engines are not stable over time. These last forever, but some of the Chinese and the other ones, do not assume that they're stable. Do not assume that any of these are stable. I always recommend a test fire, and you're going to want to do a test fire anyway, because I can't tell you exactly what letter class these engines are in. I can just tell you they lift almost a pound up to 1,000 feet. Whenever I am in a pinch and I can't press a lot of engines for a project, a lot of times I'll harvest, especially these ones, just because they're so skinny and powerful. But they're a lot of fun. There's a lot of things you can do with the parachutes, with the flares, with the engines. You know, they're a lot of fun, and they're very inexpensive. Between $5 and $10 is what you should pay. You know, if some of them are getting scarce, then maybe up to $15, $20, but that's sort of pushing it. If you're a rocketeer, this is great materials to work with. Have fun, be safe.